All right, big news yesterday. Jack Bech enters the transfer portal, and he had a breakout freshman season, obviously, but a second year that was plagued by injuries, inconsistency, and look, the wide receiver depth, right? Ultimately, I think is what was the deciding factor for Jack Bech to make it official on Tuesday that he was going to put his name into the transfer portal. First off, a little bit on Bech and just what LSU is losing, right? His freshman season, I think, is one that we will all remember as, just that local gutsy performance for a guy coming in that was unheralded and started 7 of 13 games as a freshman last year, made plays all over the place. You could see him as he, right from the start, he had a big catch against UCLA across the middle and picked up a first down, and it seemed like every time he touched the ball throughout his freshman season, something good happened. I mean, he scored a touchdown against Alabama. He had 16 catches and 200 yards this season. But last year, he led the team with 43 catches for just under 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. And as we said, started 7 of those 13 games his freshman season. There was high expectation for him coming into the season, and I think he was really limited in fall camp and in the summer of working out because of an injury that he was dealing with that set him back in fall camp. He wasn't able to start on time, and from there he couldn't get going in this wide receiver room because of there's so many players. There's not a lot of gaps. There's not a lot of openings. There's not a lot of opportunities for if you lose or have to sit out and can't go because you're injured, even if you're a guy like Jack Bech who had such a, star bright freshman season with so much expectation coming into year 2, yeah, you can get sniped. You can lose your job pretty quick just because whoever gets on the field is most likely not going to give it back. Jordy Jenkins, Malik Neighbors, Kayshawn this season obviously had his spot hammered in, but his announcement of coming back for a senior season on Monday, followed by Jack Bech's announcement on Tuesday, I don't think is a coincidence. I think that that was probably the nail in the coffin to make the decision of, look, this is going to be a crowded room next season. Bech is coming off of a year that he had his confidence, he had his health, he had everything kind of up against the wall. And look, this is going to be a transfer portal decision. And I think that we'll all kind of keep under a microscope to see how it works out. And out loud, I guess this is what the transfer portal was intended to do, to give the power to the player and allow the player to make a decision on how he or she sees the best opportunity for them. And, I hate to see it end like this for Jack Bech in the sense of, it felt like he was going to have a chance next year, even in a crowded room, to have an opportunity. But if that's not the way he sees it, then, look, you support Jack Bech, you pull for him wherever he goes, and, it's kind of on to the next stop for him. I think a lot of people think that TCU is the front runner for Bech. I think that anybody who has that type of offense that features wide receivers is going to be after him. I think that, everybody in the country is really going to be knocking down Bech's door of if they have an offense that, needs pass catchers, needs athletes, which, come on, all of college football does, he'll have his chance to go wherever he wants. I hate the fact that this is the way that it ends for him at LSU, for me personally, right? It's all about Bech and it's all about what he wants to do. from covering him and, kind of watching his game evolve, I hate to see it end like this, because I think it had a chance to really be a success story. We talked a little bit about it a couple of days ago, and it might even have been last week. Jack Bech has never dealt with what he's dealing with in his entire life when it comes to sports, when it comes to football, right? I mean, from the time that he was taking the field as, a flag football player as a kid in Acadiana Parish in Lafayette, he was the best player on the field. That grew into Little League football, that grew into high school football, that grew into his freshman season at LSU, where, he looked around in a locker room that had pros. I mean, that team had 10 guys drafted off of it last season, and Bech was arguably their best offensive player after Kayshawn went down. And, it was a familiar spot for him, that in every locker room he had walked in, he was usually the man. If he wasn't, he was a part of the structure that had those dudes in it. So when his sophomore season hit and he's a little bit behind the 8 ball from a health standpoint to start the season, so you never can get kind of going. Once you get opportunities, you try to make the best of them. And, for every punt return you bring back, there's a fumbled kickoff. For every big catch you make and touchdown you grab, there's a big drop. It couldn't get going for Bech here in year 2. And I would believe that he's never dealt with that in his life. He's never had to deal with the adversity that comes along with your play struggling, your health is in question, your confidence is a little rattled. There's players behind you that are, playing a little bit more than you that you're wondering why. I mean, there's just things that he's dealing with, that has dealt with this season, that it's the first time. So for him to go into the transfer portal, I hate to see it end like that selfishly, because I'd like to see the redemption story play out on the field that I believe would happen. I think that he's too good of a player, and he's too invested into football not to get back on the field and be an impact player at LSU. But that's not going to be the way that it works out. That's not how it's going to happen. He's going to go on to the next stop, and I think that he'll regain that. I think that, like I said, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in sports, whether it's in, your everyday life, you see this. The cream rises to the top. The talent, the ones with the skill, the ones with the ability, and they are the ones that get the jobs. They're the ones that make the plays, and I think he fits that model more than he fits the guy that was struggling this season. And I am pulling for Jack Bech. I think that Bech is going to make an impact wherever he lands. But like I said, just selfishly from my point of view, which, in Jack Bech's world, who cares?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't, and I'm not asking that he does, but I mean, this is our platform to give an opinion. I hate to not be able to see that up close here at LSU, because I know how much it meant to him and his family for him to be wearing those colors, to him to be playing in that stadium. And when there's when it seems like Walker Howard is going to be in the discussion of having a chance to play next year, if you had a chance to watch those two growing up together in high school, they were special. They were as good as a combination as this state has ever produced. Walker Howard's junior season and Jack Bech's senior season, they chopped people up. I mean, they carved up the state's top defenses.
And they knew it was coming.
Yeah. I mean, won state titles, big numbers, gaudy numbers, going at play. I mean, it was fun to watch. And, when Walker committed and got on campus, you thought, it's going to be fun when those guys get on the field together to watch them play. Not having that chance kind of sucks.
Is it as easy for Jack Bech to have stayed if he just change positions. If he just played tight end, don't you think that we could have avoided a lot of this? It seemed to be the move to the wide receiver room, which he probably advocated for more than anybody. That put him into he went from a very, desolate room into a very crowded room, and then he just got lost in the shuffle. Like if he stays at tight end, he plays.
I think so.
What,
And look,
60 more snaps, like 60% more snaps.
I think for Bech, watching Mason Taylor having the season he did was
I'd do that too.
Was probably, a little bit, a part of that confidence being shook that we talked about. That was probably him looking out there and saying that should probably be me. Like that.
Right.
I should be making that play against
that
Alabama.
too.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that look, LSU's wide receiver room is going to be fine.
Right.
Like there's no real, and that's no slight on Bech. It's more of a compliment of just how loaded that room is. I mean, when you look at the names on paper that are coming back for LSU, coming in for LSU, it's almost embarrassing. It's like, Jesus. I mean, the amount of players that they have. I mean, just talking about the guys that they have coming back on this team, right? When you spell them out at this point. Kayshawn, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Chris Hilton Jr. Who am I missing on this team right now?
Wait, that's going into next year?
Jordy Jenkins leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't know if you were listing.
No, going to next year.
You have Chris Hilton.
You got Kayshawn.
You
got Brian Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
You got Chris Hilton. You got Malik Neighbors.
And then you can add.
And then you got coming in the state's number one wide receiver in Shelton Sampson. You've got Florida's number one wide receiver coming in Jaylen Brown.
And Kyle Parker.
And you've got one of Texas's top receiver coming in Kyle Parker. And if you watch Kyle Parker play this season, he's the one that I knew the least about. He was the one that I had, rarely heard his name. You cover enough or you pay attention to enough recruiting and you'll hear guys' names like Shelton Sampson and Jaylen Brown, right? I mean, those are just 5-star elite guys. Kyle Parker is, kind of hidden in the middle of Texas and is, doesn't have the measurables that a guy like Sampson does. And I think he's like 5'10", 180 pounds. But if you watch his film, if you watch him play, he is a dog. I mean, like Harold Perkins type dog, where he is just bigger, stronger, faster than everybody out there and making it look easy when it's not. It's not. I mean, he makes it look a little easier than it should. Kyron Lacey is a name that I brought that I left out. I appreciate Migo Tez and Mike and Emily Doming for helping me out with that. And like Landon Ibieta was a guy that did not play this season, was dealing with some injury stuff and redshirted. And then also coming in the class is Kai Preon, from St. James. So I mean, the room is disgustingly built. I mean, it is. I know I'm very much biased here and looking through a very local point of view, but I can't imagine that there is a wide receiver room in the country that is more talented, maybe as talented. Ohio State continuously has great wide receiver rooms. Who knows what Bama's wide receiver room could evolve into. But right now, when you just look on paper what LSU has at that spot, it's as NFL ready of a room that you'll find in college football.
No, and Kyron Lacey.
Yeah.
That's another one I saw it in the chat. That's what I wanted to bring up. But yeah, that's
Landon Ibieta.
Didn't even see. I don't even saw him in pads.
No, I think he did with some concussion,
hurt.
Some stuff early on.
But that's why I brought up the tight end thing. And there's some people in the chat saying that he's not a tight end. If you're telling me that Jack Bech could have put on an extra 15 pounds if he wanted to play tight end, he could have. He has the skill set. He's a good blocker. Like, he does everything that a tight end does, and Denbrock's system, they want to run too tight. So you see them, at least you see the coaching staff now searching for tight ends, and that this is just could have been an easy solution in my mind for him to move down on the end a little bit. Like, that's all it would have been. You're still going to catch passes.
I think that you could tell, I think he was
the odd man out.
He was kind of bucking that last season.
That's what I'm saying.
He was trying to play his natural spot.
Right.
And I think that there was a lot of, hey, look, just get to next year. Mm-hmm. Just get to next year, and we'll make sure that you're back in your original position. And, I think that there's a couple of ways to look at it. But ultimately, I believe what set Bech back more than anything was the off-season injury. Was the late in the offseason dealing with the he was something with his shins and cast, but I mean, like, it was a lingering effect that he couldn't get on the field. And I mean, if you remember last summer, Max Johnson, Garrett Nussmeier, and Jack Bech were in each other's back pocket. Like, if you were following them on social media, every single day they were either at, like, Johnson's house in Atlanta or working out somewhere with Nussmeier in Texas, or they were down in Louisiana doing some stuff with, like, Justin Jefferson. They were working out with him one time. You know what I mean? Like, they were always together, always throwing, always working on the chemistry. This offseason, guys were doing that, and Bech wasn't a part of it because he just couldn't get going with what he was dealing with. Move that forward to fall camp. He can't participate early on. You see how talented that wide receiver group is. Those guys get on the field. Bech gets healthy, struggling to get back, makes a couple of plays, drops a couple of passes, fumbles a kickoff. Just never can consistently put it together here in his sophomore season. Meanwhile, you got guys that are already in the room that have been eaten. That are gaining confidence, that are making plays. Mason Taylor, at tight end.
Malik Neighbors.
Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
Just you looked around that room and you saw, like, man, I'm getting passed up. It's just it's with it, whatever it's the cause of it. It's just a room that you can't slip. You can't miss a day. And it's for Bech, I think he got gobbled up a little bit on it. You know what I mean?
I don't know if you have any sources or if you can answer, but do you have an idea of where he will be entertaining for the portal?
I don't have like a list, but I know, like, Tulane, TCU, schools like that. I've heard a lot of TCU early on from people within, that are close to him.
Because he's good enough to play.
Yeah, no doubt.
This isn't a situation in which he feels like he has to take, like, a step down because of his talent. It's just a situation where he's in a crowded room and he can still go to a Big 12 team. I mean, Tulane obviously is in the American Athletic Conference. Mm-hmm. Like, that's
senior quarterback coming back,
right? But if you saw it on the surface, they'll be like, "Oh, he has to move down a conference." So, it's not the SEC. But the way Tulane's rolling right now,
ask Trey Quinn how that worked out for him.
Mm-hmm. Got him to the league.
He's all over the record books at SMU.
Yeah.
Played for who? Sonny Dykes, who's head coach now.
TCU.
Yeah. So, I think, Bech fits a role that, if somebody has a vacancy there, which I don't know what TCU's roster looks like. I know that they had a lot of wide receivers that are upperclassmen.
But if there's 1,000 people in the portal, there's certainly a home for somebody.
Sure.
Rosters look different than they did 3 days ago.
Yeah, no, without question.